What's up, good people? Welcome to another episode of Better with Paul. Let me just say, is I see you in the comments already. I don't think I've ever seen this much pre-activity for a session ever. Uh, I'll say this too: is that this is one of those times where I truly wish we could talk about something else. But let me just build into how today happened. Because if you watch Better with Paul every Monday and Friday, right, at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, you know that on Mondays is when I do my Mentor Monday session. And it's really more so of a teaching session. And then Fridays, we have a full on panel. Today is different. Why? Because this past weekend, this past week, this past year, right, it's been different. And what I realized, or should I say, I realized this weekend is that I started getting a lot of calls from friends in the States. So if you know, I live here in London now. I've been here for three years already, but I got a lot of calls from friends in the States right around like Thursday, Friday, right? And what I noticed with the calls is it was pretty much two different discussions that were happening. And I don't want to stereotype, but I just want to tell you what was happening with my friends. Okay. So these were mostly fellas, right? My boys calling me. So a lot of Black men calling me. We're going back and forth. We're talking. Some of y'all are watching right now. And overall, what I was hearing was not just pain, but it was this challenge around not wanting to continue to play small and be small. This was the common theme, right? The common theme among my Black friends was and let me even stereotype my Black, a lot of them are in corporate, Wall Street, right? Physically, a lot of them were big, and they were talking about how physically they didn't want to keep having to play small, how to crouch over and laugh, right, all the time, right? In other words, to make sure that everyone that they were interacting with wasn't scared off, right? And then even intellectually playing small, right? They were tired of intellectually playing small and not being able to display everything that they could. And they ended, almost all the conversations ended with, what can we do? What can we do? Then I was fielding a lot of calls from white friends. A matter of fact, I was getting a lot of calls from white celebs right here in London, where I am, because if you know, one of the shows that I host is called Celebs Go Dating, and that's what I deal with is a lot of celebs, and a lot of these celebs on the show were reaching out to me, which some of my friends say, it's not our burden as someone who is Black to explain to someone who is not Black what you need to do and how you need to get educated. I hear that, but these were my friends. I was there for them, right? I was having 1 hour, 2 hour conversations. And a lot of these folks, and once again, I'm going to stereotype my white friends, a lot of them were confused. They were confused, right? They were unaware. They were literally unaware of what in the world was happening in the United States, what's happening now in London and cities across the world in terms of protests. They were unaware. So there was a state of confusion. And then I had to break it down why, right? Why we are where we are. But then the conversation ended in the same way with my Black friends. And that is, what do we do? What do we do? And so if you know me well as finance is my background. I've always been an advocate for Black economic empowerment, always. And so whenever someone was asking me, what do we do? What's the next step? Because this is something that consciously I've been thinking about, right? I've been thinking about since Oscar Grant, 2009. I've been thinking about this is, what do we do? The only solution in my mind, right? The only solution, economic empowerment, right? That was, in my opinion, economic empowerment. Now, I'm not saying we're not pushing forward on other fronts, education, mental health, etc. No. We push forward on all fronts. But the front that leads the charge, in my mind, economic empowerment, right? I believe that political power follows economic power. Now, I realize I'm not the only one thinking this. So get online, right? Seeing what a lot of my friends are saying. And then by Sunday, my wife, Jill, who's really, she's the CEO of our relationship, right? She said, Paul, you can't do a Mentor Monday today. You have to get on and you have to talk about economic empowerment. And you should bring some folks on who you look up to. So this is Jill. Jill created today. And so literally with Jill, I thought of three people. And within 5 minutes of that conversation with Jill, I shot each one of them a DM, right? See, you could slide into the DMs for good reasons, y'all. You could slide into the DMs for good reasons. So I shot them all a message. They all immediately shot the message back saying, let's do it. And I was so happy and proud because these are three people that if I were to put together a board, right? A board to direct Black empowerment, right? If there was such a board and I had the ability to nominate, these are the three people I would nominate for real. So today we are going to get into specifically what is Black empowerment? How do we create Black empowerment? What is the responsibility for us as Black Americans? What is the responsibility for people who are outside of the United States? So Black people outside the United States, Jamaicans, Ghanaians, right? Black Londoners. What's the responsibility outside of the US? What's the responsibility inside of the US if you are not Black? Do you bear responsibility in creating, helping, right? In terms of economic empowerment? What about if you live outside of the United States and you are not Black? Do you bear any responsibility? So we're going to be talking about all of this. And let me ask this question just to get this conversation started, right? Do you believe, this is just a yes or a no, okay? Yes or a no. Do you believe non-Black people, all right, so we're just gonna say non-Black people. Do you believe that non-Black people bear any responsibility in helping with Black economic development? Do you believe that? Do you believe that if you are not Black, you bear responsibility? Or are you in the camp where you believe that this is strictly about Black people mobilizing and that is it? Right. So I'm curious about that just as we get going. This is good. I see a lot of white people saying yes. This is good, right? This is a good start. All right. Let's get going. Let's get started right here. All right. So I want to bring you know what I do is I bring, oh wow, I see a lot of yeses. I see a lot of yeses, right? Okay. So let's start with this. Let's start with this. I want to bring on our first guest. And as you know, if you're new to what we're doing, you'll know that I bring on one guest. We spend about 5 minutes, bring on the second 5 minutes, third 5 minutes, and then I bring the panel on. Once we bring the panel, that's when you can start asking your questions. Okay. And what's really cool now is we're at about 1,500 live across all platforms, which is great. So please continue to share this out. Continue to share. Okay. First up on Paul's, dream panel of economic experts to lead Black empowerment in the United States. First up is someone who I consider to be, and she will blush when I say this, but I literally consider to be royalty. If you know my story, you've read my bio, you will know that there is one book that I have always talked about as the game changer in my life. A matter of fact, what is that book? I want somebody to write that down. If you know my story, what is the one book that I have said has been not just the game changer, it was the very first book I ever read in my life, cover to cover. And I hate to say that, at 18, it was the very first book that I ever read cover to cover. Somebody tell me, drop it right now in the chat, right? Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Periscope. What book do you think that was? Now, oh, look at this right out the gate. Look at this. Everybody is saying it. Everybody's saying, look, there he goes. You know it. You know it. You know me. You know me. All right. This is, if there was only one book I could recommend for every Black entrepreneur in the world, and really every entrepreneur, I would say, period, this is the book that I would recommend. Now, it just so happens, this book written by Reginald Lewis, it just so happens that today we have one of Reginald Lewis's daughters on the panel. All right. This is Christina Lewis Halpern. Okay. Now, Christina in her own right is a phenom. Okay. She's an award-winning journalist, Wall Street Journal, right? She does a lot. But in particular, what I love is that she has played a significant role in the technology space. So in helping Black entrepreneurs to learn how to code, right? In particular, so the youth to learn how to code. And this is her All-Star Code Foundation. She's someone who I think spans time in her knowledge, because not only can she speak to what her father did, which was monumental, she can also speak to what the Gen Xers are doing, but she can also speak to what the millennials and the Gen Zs are doing, right? Because she's on the ground as well. So that being said, let's bring her on. Here she is. Christina, what's going on? How's everything?
Hello. Things are good. Thank you for having me on your live stream about creating Black economic power. I love the message that you create, and I love the role model that you are, working your day job, but also taking time to be entrepreneurial and to lift up as you climb. Thanks also for your kind words about my dad, Mr. Lewis, and and why should I guys love the fun? There it is. Check it out. He died in 1993, and I only wish that he were here today. But it's an honor to, to speak and to be able to pass along the things that I've learned and speak to you and all the many other fans out there who are inspired by, by Reginald Lewis.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's start right there, Christina, because as you mentioned, we all wish he was here, right? We all wish he was here. Mm-hmm. Let's go back to his time though, because what I find to be really interesting is that he I think his heyday of his career was, it coincided perfectly with the Black Power movement in the United States, kind of that mid 1960s all the way up to early 1980s.
Absolutely.
And one of the pillars of the movement was economic empowerment, right? So what was his view? Like, do you know about what was his view? How did he approach Black economic empowerment at that time? Did he view it as critical and the only way to political empowerment, or did he see it somewhere else?
Oh, absolutely. When he was born in 1942 and lived through a culture of achievement. So his mother had didn't graduate from high school, but his family were all about achieving, educating, going to college, and even graduate school and working. But politically, he was always a supporter of African-American politicians and others. So to his time, he said that the next challenge is economic. That was absolutely what he believed. And he talked about that with us. And my sister would tell you the exact same thing. He said, getting the vote, of course, was vital to be a full participating citizen. But the next challenge in the civil rights movement is economic. And he absolutely believed that.
Wow. Okay. So now that obviously is rubbed off on you a little bit, I would imagine, right?
Yes, so, absolutely.
So what I think what really drove me to just reach out immediately is because, I follow you on Instagram, and
Black economic power is a multi-generational affair.
Okay.
And that's what I believe and how I see it. And my father understood that when you climb, and then particularly when you make money, it's actually not even for you. He saw his work as being a role model to others, but he also saw his money as being money that wasn't just for him, but it was for his family, for his brothers and sisters, for his mother, for friends, for activists. He donated to David Dinkins' very first campaign. Mayor Dinkins, the first Black mayor of New York. He was Jesse Jackson's single greatest contributor.
Oh, wow. When Jesse Jackson ran for president?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Okay.
When Jesse Jackson ran for president the second time. I mean, I saw Jesse Jackson. I know his daughters. Like, he would tell you that, my father's early donations helped drive his campaign. So at a concrete level, Black money and Black entrepreneurs, when they reach a certain point, can drive that money into the community and achieve real results. Because that's how politicians do it. Politicians from all communities, they go to their base and they need that early money to go and achieve higher. But so for Black economic power specifically, it's a multi-generational affair. So you're building wealth, but it's for others, and then your children can go and, if you've done it right, take up the cause. It can't happen in just one generation. This is a 400-year-old problem. It's a 400-year-old problem. Going back to 1619 when the first slave ship arrived in this country. So no, you on your own in your 80, 90, 100 years on this earth, you're not going to be able to solve it. So that's what motivates me. And that's why I started All Star Code, because I said, as far as my father took things, and as far as the greatest generation, other generations took things, there are more challenges. And I saw a challenge in the tech entrepreneurship space.
Yeah.
I went to my first tech conference now 8 years ago, and I couldn't believe how few Black people there were, how few Black and Latino people there were in the true tech ecosystem. And I said, this is something that I can do something about. And All Star Code is about fostering a pipeline of people, of Black and Latino people, but who are in a position to thrive in computer science and engineering. Because how do you get Black economic power? What I was taught is that you can earn it.
You can earn Black economic power.
You can earn it.
Okay. And just help me understand that.
Okay.
If you can earn Black economic power, how so?
Oh, I mean, by working.
No.
By working.
That makes sense, Paul. Come on, guys. By working.
Get a job.
Gotcha.
Get a job and find a job. And my dad was entrepreneurial, but he believed in jobs, and he worked jobs all his life. All his life, until he got to a point of mastery. Yeah, but we're talking 60, 70, 80, 100-hour weeks of just working his job, from being a busboy to having a paper route to being a lawyer, but working for other people. And he worked in a law firm. And then after all those years and decades, then he went on his own and started doing his deals himself. But so when I looked at tech, I said, well, what is the first step to having an amazing tech startup? And it's not graduating from college and starting a tech startup, although, for some people that can work, but it's about knowing the skills and having a job within a tech startup.
Yeah.
Right?
And on top of knowing the skills, what I love about even your father's story, it's mastering, right?
Yes.
It's having mastery of skills. This is very important. But I tell you what, Christine, this is good. We're going to keep it going. Like, there's so many comments. I can't even look at the comment stream right now, but we're going to come back. So thank you very much, especially for explaining, your father's story for those that don't know. So thank you, Christina. And by the way, guys, if you have not read Why Should White Guys Have All the Fun, immediately, that's the first thing you should do right now, is order that book. Okay, let's move on to our next guest. Okay, our next panelist. Our next panelist is someone who I don't know how long I've known her. Like, I really don't know how long. It feels like it's been at least a decade. I feel like I've watched her grow up. Like, I don't know. But she's someone who I am incredibly proud of. And I will say this, what I see a lot on social media in particular is I think I see a lot of people who play a role, right? They play the role of the advocate, they play the role of the expert, they play the role of someone who cares, right? And it's all for clout. That's really what it is. And especially now that entrepreneurship has become, so in vogue. But I'm going to tell you what, Kezia Williams, who's our next guest, is someone who is 1000% bona fide. Like, she is from the second I met her all the way through until today, right? She has not changed who she is. And she's someone who, it's just so exciting to have her here because this is her topic. And here she is. Here's my sis.
Hey, Mo, how are you?
I tell you what, I'm ready. I'm ready. How are you doing?
So much for having me. I think it has probably been close to a decade. I don't know, it's been some time. Thank you for coming to talk to my babies and your Not Anymore College Fund. They still talk about how great your presentation was. And y'all, I just need to shout out Paul and his entire family who supported Black Upstart by wearing our Black Ugly sweaters, which were actually kind of cute. We did it the first year, then he brought in the entire family, Jill plus the 2 boys, the second year, and that helped fund our first Black entrepreneurial efforts. So this is a full circle moment for me. Thank you for having me.
Wow. That's awesome. That's awesome. All right. So then let's get down to business. I see everybody saying, I love her. Okay. All right. So now here's where I want to start with you, right? Because this weekend, when I started talking about, okay, it's about Black empowerment, right? To my community, there was a lot of pushback. And the pushback was, well, Paul, we just don't have enough assets in our community. Our financial literacy rates are just too low right now, right? The number of times that the dollar bounces around the community is not enough, right? We don't have enough Black economic base to start, let alone to build within the next 3 to 5 years. So I'd love your take on where are we right now, right? Because you're on the ground, right? So where do you feel we are in terms of our strength, our Black economic strength? And then where do you see the possibilities of the next 3 to 5 years?
I'm so happy that you asked that question. I'm actually doubly happy that you brought up that book, Why Should White Guys Have All the Fun? I think sometimes we focus on how much fun the white people are having, that we forget that Black people have also had a lot of fun, especially as it relates to asset and wealth accumulation. One of the things that I'm fundamentally against is teaching Black people how to follow a white blueprint. So usually when we're talking about entrepreneurship, we're normally saying, okay, well, how can we be the next Steve Jobs? How can we be the next Bill Gates? How can we be the next Mark Zuckerberg? But I think when we teach Black children that, when we center Black adults down into that example, what we're really doing is selling them a lie. Because no matter how much Black entrepreneurs try, no matter how much Black children try, we will never grow up to be 1, white, because we're Black, 2, male, because perhaps you're female, but we will never benefit from white male privilege. But thank God that there is such a thing as Black privilege. And so when I hear, why should white guys have all the fun? I think Black people had a lot of fun. And it's interesting that this is centering, or this conversation is falling on a day when Black Wall Street was being burned down by white vigilantes. Because Black Wall Street is an excellent example of how Black people took the knowledge, skills, and abilities within their own spaces and built up a community for themselves. I'm talking about barbershops, I'm talking about lawyers, attorneys, teachers. They had hotels, and this started because we realized the power of the Black dollar. When the sword story of Black Wall Street is told sometimes is centered in Tulsa, Oklahoma, right? But one thing people often don't say is that Black Wall Streets existed all across the country. There was Black Wall Streets in Washington, D.C. There were Black Wall Streets in Durham, North Carolina, Jackson, Richmond, Virginia, where I'm from. And in those communities, Black people supplied the needs that white entrepreneurs refused to supply. Now, we can talk about how those communities were burned down, but we also need to tell the other side of that narrative, and that is when that community was burned down, it was built back up again without any type of white support. And yes, I believe in white allyship. Yes, I believe that white people can step out there and be activists. But then during Black Wall Street times, those insurance claims were not being filled. So Black people had to figure out a way, right, to make a way out of no way, to make $1 out of 15 cents. As Black people, we spend $1.3 trillion annually. I want you to know how I didn't say that we have $1.3 trillion worth of buying power, because it cannot be powerful if we're spending that money making other communities rich. Our $1.3 trillion is enough money, I believe, for us to not only invest in our communities by buying Black but starting Black-owned businesses, but also to realize that income is not assets. Right? We work for our income, but we cannot pass our income down to the next generation. We have to use those incomes to buy assets, and those assets are passed down to the next generation. And the last thing that I'll say is that we live in a capitalist economy. Okay? A capitalist economy is all about team sports, which means you run as fast as you can during your generation. You take your assets, which you've accumulated, and you pass that down to the next generation, and they run fast and pass it down to the next generation, and so on and so forth. The sooner we learn group economics, right? We learn how to capitalize off of the capital in our own communities, the sooner we will learn how to stand on our own 2 feet and become economically independent. Of people with no capital in a capitalist economy will remain economically weak.
Yeah. Do I need to say anything?
I've been thinking about this. This has been on my heart, it's been on my soul.
It sounds like we thought about this once or twice. Yeah. But no, I tell you, you echoed what Christina just said. You know, it's generational, it's team, right? I love how you rephrase the 1.3 trillion. I actually have not heard that rebrand. Very nice, very nicely done. All right, so everybody, you're coming back, right? She's coming back. Don't worry, guys. She's coming back. Everybody say bye-bye. She's coming back. Don't worry. I know she was on fire. Wait until later. But we have to get our last guest on, last but not least. This is a man who I have been following from afar in complete admiration. This is, I mean, he is another. We were talking about, Mr. Lewis, Reginald Lewis being one of the GOATs. This next gentleman, Rodney Sampson, is a GOAT, right? He was one of the first Black people, period, to raise over $1 million in venture capital financing. Think about that. And I know he's going to, give us the raw stats, but I believe the last thing I saw was less than 200 Black founded companies have raised over $1 million in funding, and he was one of the first. He's someone who speaks and lives this topic, and it's an honor to have him. Here he goes, Rodney Sampson.
Hey, Paul. Good afternoon. Good evening. How are you?
Yeah, good. Oh, thank you very much. I'm good. It's good to see you. It's good to see you, Rodney.
Absolutely.
This was actually. Tell me. Let's start with that. Was I right on that? Is it only 200? Less than 200 Black founded companies have raised over $1 million in financing?
That's about right. When we do this research and data, and that research came out of Harlem Capital's 2019 diversity report on the Black and brown founders, and they used the resources they had. They used TechCrunch, CB Insights, articles. I always say I hope there are more that just have been so under the radar screen, that we don't know about. But when you think about those 200, and I looked at the list and I was going through, and I was like, oh wow, Omar Wasso from Black Planet, Clarence Wooten, and myself actually made the list, which is good context to kind of jump right in just a little bit. First of all, thank you for hosting this conversation. And definitely thank you to my colleagues today, Christina and Kezia, for following the vision of Paul to talk about economic empowerment on such a painful time in our history. First of all, before we jump in, I just want to say I hope everyone is as safe and sound and sane as possible, just considering everything. I am here in Atlanta. I am a native of Atlanta. Forever, I love Atlanta, as we say. And just seeing everything that's going down and, underlying all of that, we talk about social determinants of health and social determinants of police brutality and criminal justice. But a part of that, if not the core of that, is economics.
Yes.
Economics is the precedence, along with our policy considerations as well. But just to lead with a quick story to give you some context.
Okay.
So 20 years ago, folks like Omar, Clarence, and I, we looked up to a man that you all should know by the name of Emmett McHenry. And this is contextual to what we're going to be talking about today. Emmett was the founder of Network Solutions.
Okay.
Network Solutions was the first company that received a contract from the United States government to issue and sell domain names to the public.
Wow.
So Emmett, being a Black man, he had a successful IT contracting business serving the federal government. He was the only company in America that bid on it. And he won it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Emmett had to transition his service-based firm, which he had been doing for a while and was very successful, to a product-based company. He had to become a tech company. He had to build a website. He needed servers. There was no cloud back then. He had to get data centers. He had to get bandwidth, right? He needed engineers. Emmett had to raise $3 million. He went to the who's who of Black America. He went to all the heads of the major publications. He went to the civil rights groups. He went to HBCUs. He went to Black media companies. And because the venture class, that class was an unknown class for many of them, they said no, because no one had websites and didn't know what a domain name was.
Yeah, it was just too high risk. Too high risk.
No. Long story short, he got one term sheet, and the term sheet basically took Network Solutions off his hands for $5 million. Now, a lot of folks were like, man, you got that bag. He already had a multi-million-dollar company. And he said, you know what? Yeah, I got a small bag. And Emmett has done incredibly well for himself. The company that acquired him for $5 million, roughly, went on a few years later to get acquired for tens of billions of dollars. Now, in hindsight, think of the HBCU's endowments if they would have put $50,000, right? Think about the Black publications that have all struggled, and if they could have put $50,000 in. Think about the Black churches. Think about Paul. You and I could have come up with 50, man.
Yeah, 50,000. Yeah,
right.
That's incredible.
You see, and so my story is 20 years ago when no one was talking about this, and we were literally heads down building in a technology startup and venture ecosystem. Folks were like, well, what's your job? I mean, what do? You work in the computers and you work in the tech. And they really didn't understand it until you had things to show for it. When I took my mother, my wife and I said, let's get our mother a mink coat, right? They understood the consumerism, but not the wealth piece. But I'll close with this, is the same challenges that Black founders had 20 years ago, we have them even still today. The fact that there have not been one Black venture-backed founder a month in the last 20 years compared to 25 to 30,000 last year, $131 billion. And some people may say, well, you're right. We can't play the same game of white VC capital. Right. But the game we have to play is the mechanism by which all Black people can invest and participate in the ownership of scalable companies. Right. Particularly being in the future of work, this fourth industrial revolution that's being driven by artificial intelligence, machine learning, quantum, AR, VR, robotics. That's what's driving the future of work and opportunity. And COVID-19 has essentially allowed the future of work to accelerate itself, with 40 million Black people in America out of work, 7 million of them being Black people. Those jobs aren't coming back. Yet the top tech companies and venture-backed companies, who now are responsible for 65% of all net new jobs, those companies are hiring. So I put my Brookings Institution hat on for a second.
Go ahead, do it.
5% of all net new jobs are coming from the venture-backed high-growth companies that most of us don't even know the name of.
Okay.
Right? Okay. They're off the radar screen because we don't hear about most of these companies, Paul, until they IPO.
Right.
And investing in IPO companies is a conservation of wealth strategy, not a creation of wealth
strategy.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Absolutely. I'll close with that, but thank you so much. And
I tell you what, I will expose my ignorance there. I did not know about Emick McHenry. I didn't know his story. But I tell you, the moment I'm off of this, I am reading everything I can about it. I did not know his story. Man, thank you for that. Thank you. Let me just ask you, I mean, you blessed us with a lot there, but let me ask you just one question before we go into the panel. Right before this, I had a good friend of mine who's an attorney out of DC. She said, Paul, we just all need to come together. We need more financial institutions, right? We need more funding sources. We need more VCs. We need more banks, etc. Could you paint the picture just so that everyone understands? And if you could do it even globally, how many Black VC firms, funding institutions do we have vis-a-vis non-Black?
I mean, think about it. If there are only 200 venture-backed founders, there may be 20, arguably, maybe 50. I think Sherelle Dorsey at The Plug, you should look up The Plug. You should check out her newsletter if you want to get access to Black tech. And if you subscribe, use OHub, you get a 10% off. But you gotta expose yourself to this high growth ecosystem before you engage in it. And so The Plug identified 50 Black VCs in the world, but we're not sure if all 50 of them had actively raised capital to be able to deploy. But I want to take a step back. When you start looking at the venture class and angel investing, venture investing in private equity, you have to realize that that's only 3%. That's still only 3% of the macroeconomic stack in the world. That's 3%. And that was angel and venture in the United States in particular last year. 131 billion only represents 3%. So one, as Black people globally, we have to understand how things are funded, because depending on what the thing is, the entity is funded a certain way. NGOs, foundations, and philanthropic organizations are funded by donations. And some of them are so large that they become granting organizations. So we can make the argument that we need to pool our money around Black philanthropy, because Black philanthropists understand Black issues because they have experience in living through those issues, many of them. That's number one. But then you have to think about other types, how companies are funded. Small businesses, some prefer loans, some prefer debt. There's been such racism and bias in the banking system in terms of Black people being turned down for loans. At the same time, a pre-revenue startup can't get a loan because they have no revenue to pay the loan, right? So depending on the type of entity that you want to have, there are different types of funding sources. And then, of course, there's the customers are the best form of funding and non-dilutive capital. But let's take this to policy. If we have more Black PACs, right, we've got to have more these political instruments by which we can elect people They take on donations. So depending on the entity, we've got to look at and learn the funding stack at all levels, and different people can support different ways. But
Right.
everyone can do, if everyone does something frequently,
Yes.
that's how we actually get catalytic scale.
Yeah. And that's exactly where I want to go. So what I'm going to do is let's bring on the full panel right now, the full crew. Here it is. It's about to get crazy. It's about to get crazy, right? I tell you what, this has been an education for me already. And I just want to laser rifle through questions because I want to make sure that we're leaving this discussion with action, right? With action items, right? And so let's start with Rodney, where you just left off. If everyone does something frequently, right? I like that. Everyone does something frequently, okay? Let's talk about what do we actually, no. Let me take one step back. Everyone, is this everyone? Is this people who are not Black? So if you are not Black, is there an onus on you to do something frequently? And if so, what is that? Like that's the question that I've been getting in the inbox constantly. I'm not Black. I want to do something. What is it?
Absolutely. I think this planet has a responsibility to right the wrongs against humans of the African diaspora everywhere. And so I know we look at a lot of things in terms of an American context, but we have to look at what's going on in Africa, what's going on in Europe and Asia, South America. Black people are everywhere. I start to look at the folks who are here today, whether you're Black, white, or however you identify. You know, Paul, if you know you're a content producer, you know, can we subscribe to your content to make sure that you have the revenue in order to continue producing this content? Christina, can we donate to your organization and other organizations like yours? We have an OHUB, foundation. Kezia, I know you're in business. Can we buy your products? Can we subscribe to your channels? And I mean, think about it. And I'm going to use the American context. There are 40 million people in America. I know 7 million people are out of work, but people are finding a way. You know, I mean, if we had millions of people giving $1, $2, $3 to subscribe to content channels, look at the scale that these particular businesses can get. So I think that when we start looking at how do we fund things and how our entities funded that want to be funded, then we should figure out how to support all of those entities at the way that we can.
I agree. It's all about investment. And I do believe very strongly in the role of allies, white allies, but allies of all, all the other races, and the work that's done in political power, speaking out, letting your circle know where you stand, teaching your children about racism and not shying away from that is all important. But when we talk about Black economic power, investing in the Black community is something that allies can do. And I'll say one overlooked way of doing this is donating to Black-led and Black-founded nonprofits. There is a huge gap in the nonprofit sector between Black-founded nonprofits and nonprofits founded by people of other races. And by empowering Black social entrepreneurs and Black philanthropists, Black people who are giving back, you are really activating and still injecting money into the Black community. So buying Black and investing in for-profit Black businesses is not the only way that you can contribute to the Black community. Black leaders of nonprofits are, have been soldiers in the fight. I mean, the Black Church, which is a nonprofit, was the key leadership in the civil rights movement. So the nonprofit sector is a potential engine of economic power. It's also capital that is more easily able to be leveraged to be invested in the Black community. For example, different university endowments and others are now looking into aggressive forms of social impact investing, say where they invest more in minority businesses. But so I'd encourage allies to look at the nonprofit sector and take time to be conscious about who founded those organizations. You know, are they led by people within the Black community, and look to aggressively donate to those organizations, because they do, like Black for-profit entrepreneurs, have a harder time getting funded.
All right, I'll hop in here. I think that those are all excellent recommendations. But as I think about the times that we're in, I think Black people are really asking themselves, what can we do? You know, we're in the middle of a pandemic. We are reading these news reports that Black people are disproportionately affected by the virus. We're seeing that 30 million people are unemployed. We've already heard the cliche that when America catches a cold, Black America catches a flu. That's true economically. And then we're seeing George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, Black men, Black women being gunned down in the streets by officers, by white vigilantes. And we're asking ourselves, like, how do we keep ourselves healthy? How do we keep ourselves employed? And how do we keep ourselves alive? And I think Black people are really seeking solutions and searching for answers. One of the statistics that I always like to say with Black Upstart is that there are 2.56 million Black entrepreneurs, but only 110,000 of them have the capacity to employ at least one person. So I'm gonna say that one more time. 2.56 million Black entrepreneurs, and according to the last census, only 110,000 of them have the capacity to employ at least one person. This 110,000 Black employers employ less than 1 million people. But in the last jobs report, there were over 18 million people either looking for work or currently employed, which means that if every Black employer wanted to employ a Black employee, they couldn't. I think every Black person right now that only has one stream of income is hustling backwards. And that's what I like to say with Black Upstart. I have never gotten a job by applying with the name Kezia. Always K. Every single workforce that I've been in that has been majority, I've had to integrate in order to keep my job. And this is the type of pain of employment that Black people are experiencing. So I think we need to get practical about making sure that the hands that feed us also don't have the power to serve us. And I think there's 3 ways to get started. One, I think that every Black person should consider starting a business. You can start a tech business, and we've already heard from Rodney Sampson how difficult that can be, but also small business is still making money as long as you can figure out how to solve a problem in the economic marketplace. And what we're seeing right now in the American economy and economies across the country is that the whole world is pivoting and trying to figure out how to do business differently, how to keep business solvent, and how to keep profits coming through the door. But you have to understand how business works. I think that every Black family needs an LLC, because with an LLC, there are assets that you can buy as a collective versus trying to purchase assets as an individual. You can open a brokerage account and you can buy securities together. You can pool your resources and you can buy property together. You can invest in the business that Rodney Sampson was talking about as a private investor if your LLC has the net worth in order to qualify you to do that. And if not, there's always trial equity funding. Finally, I think that every Black person should be investing in the stock market. We talked a lot about that in February and March when the market was trying to reach a bottom. I think it hit the bottom on March 23rd. But if we're going to be spending our money as consumers, I think we should be producers. But if we're going to be spending our money as consumers with large corporations, then we need to be figuring out how we can get a return on our investments. When you spend as a consumer, that's a one-way transaction. They are benefiting from what you pay to them. But when you are an investor and that company is coming up, guess what? Your bank account is also coming up. So I think as Black people specifically, we have to understand what the language of wealth is. The language of wealth transcends race, it transcends gender, it transcends ethnicity. Once we learn the language of wealth, then we're able to apply it in a way where we can truly become economically independent. And I think, as Paul said, after that, the politics, etc.,
follows. So let me ask this, because this touches upon what you said, Kezia, a little while ago, where you're talking about, which I didn't even know that stat. That blew my mind, about what only 100,000 Black businesses can actually hire, right? Only have the capacity to hire. So then my question is this: what about this blanket notion of everyone spending a certain percentage of their money purchasing products and services from Black people? Like, does that do it? Because I've looked at the numbers and I thought, oh my God, like if 15, 20, 25% of every dollar is going towards Black business, then there's more like businesses scale, there's more capacity, there's more bounce rate in the community. How does that kind of blanket notion sit with you all?
Well, the 15, it's a great point to be aware of where your dollars are going and looking to buy Black, looking to employ people who are Black. If you are, if you're at the stage where you have a business that that is in a position to employ people, like I do and Keisha and Robbie do, but there is a point about accessing capital and learning how to figure out how to access capital that is in majority hands and getting it invested in the Black community. That's a point of leverage that will make everything faster. If you can access allied funding or access funding from majority organizations. So the 15% pledge that Aurora James has sent out was actually not to other Black people or even POC as individuals to buy Black. She was asking major corporations, Walmart, Amazon, major grocery companies to commit to 15% of their spending be in Black businesses, to be proportional to the amount of to Black people's percentage in the population. So that's what the 15% pledge is about. It's not just asking individual Black consumers to solve this problem, but about leveraging our consumer spending power. Because, as a Black person, there's you can't, it may not always make sense to always be buying from a Black business, depending on where it is, what's happening. It's convenient. Like, I can't shop at Walmart. That's not, I don't think that's realistic or even fair for this burden to be going just onto other Black people and consumers. So there's a huge opportunity for accessing capital by employing leverage. And grassroots political power and movements that we're seeing now on social media can affect that change. So it's not just about the growth of your personal business, my nonprofit or others. There is room to speak out and access companies and others to invest in the Black community. And I think that's a real source of leverage, essentially accessing that capital through relationships that have been developed in order to bring it into the community.
Okay.
It's really a really important path forward.
All right, fair. And that was Aurora James. That's that theory of 15% that major corporations are now spending, right, on Black business. So Kezia, Rodney, what's your take on that? But then also, what's your take on us putting the burden on ourselves and saying, we're going to make sure that 25%, 50%, every dollar, right, goes to Black business?
I'd love to hop in there. I think that Black wealth is a mindset before it's an asset. And I'll say that one more time. I think that Black wealth is a mindset before it's an asset. I think we need to get into the mind frame of realizing that Black-owned businesses create value. I think that there is an unfortunate stigma that Black entrepreneurs have to do business perfectly in order for the dollar to be recycled through their ventures, through their businesses. We've seen a lot of corporations make mistakes, especially as it relates to race. We've seen it in H&M. We've seen it with the Fuck Gucci movement. We've seen it happen time and time and time again. We've seen it happen in the waiting rooms of Starbucks, and yet we protest for a little bit, and weeks later we're holding a Starbucks cup with the Gucci belt wearing an H&M shirt. But if a Black-owned business does the same thing, our boycotts are not temporary. Sometimes those boycotts are permanent. We need to realize the power that exists in the Black dollar. And if we need any proof, I believe that Black history proves that. Mary McCoy Bethune, people know her as Bethune-Cookman University president and founder, but she started in a one-room schoolhouse, and how she funded that schoolhouse was by selling sweet potato pies and meat pies to the mine workers that worked down the street that gave her dollars in order to make her rent, and then she scaled from there. We can use more contemporary examples like Issa Rae. She started out on YouTube for free. She produced the first episodes by using the revenue that she was generating from her job or her paycheck in order to fund her dream. But when it was time to scale, she reached out and she did a crowdfunding campaign, and it was the community that came together in order to fund the completion of her first season and also fund the second season. The power of the Black dollar is so incredibly strong that other communities have realized just how significant it is. When you look at the top 10 businesses that Black people normally start, it's healthcare, waste remediation, admin services, and other. When you look at where Black people over-index in spending, it's ethnic hair care and beauty aids, contraceptives, refrigerated drinks, dried vegetables, etc. We don't start businesses in where we actually spend. If we realize the power, I think, of the Black dollar, then we wouldn't go begging other people to do for us what we are capable of doing for ourselves. Buying Black and spending Black should become a practice. And I think the quicker we adopt the mindset of saying buying Black is our asset, I think the sooner we can say that this is our practice and not just a temporary occurrence.
Okay, Kezia, just one quick follow-up on that is, I'm with you on buying Black. Are you labeling a certain percentage? Like, is there a certain goal, a certain target, or is it just buy Black? Like, because that, and the reason why I ask that is because I feel like whenever we give ourselves a metric and a deadline, like just in our professional lives, there's a higher chance of us delivering on what that thing is, right? So, what's your take? Like, is it a percentage? Or is it just buy Black?
I think we need to start with the buy Black. I think percentages can be a goal, but I think we need to think practical. When you're getting married, if you have a wedding, who are the vendors that you're hiring? If you're going to brunch and saying instead of saying let's just go out to brunch, are you brunching at a Black-owned business? Now that a lot of the buying is happening online and you can actually see the vendor from which you are purchasing, Amazon, you can see the vendor right there. Etsy, you can see the person who's selling you the mask, selling you the hand sanitizer, selling you the gloves. Be intentional about how you find the person who is producing the product or service that you want to buy. Same with hair care, same with nail care. There are a lot of entrepreneurs that are small, that are providing the services that we need, but we're not being proactive enough, I think, to seek out who those individuals are. One good community that has a community of Black entrepreneurs that are supplying these products and services are We Buy Black. They have a whole community of Black entrepreneurs that's similar to Amazon.
Yeah. Online marketplace. I agree. It's great. So Rodney, what's your take on this? I mean, this is a topic that it's interesting. This is a topic that I feel like we've been talking about for decades, sure. Right? Buy Black, right? We've been talking since the Black Power, even before Black Power movement. What's your take on this notion of buying Black?
Well, I want to add some current context to everything that we're discussing. And it was exciting to hear Kezia, Kez in the mainstream, but Kezia, to hear Kezia echo that everyone can be entrepreneurship. We were talking about this 20 years ago, that everyone has entrepreneurship in their DNA. It has to be unlocked. And developing that mindset. We have writings on that, Your Manifest Destiny, or in our Kingonomics writings. But I think we got to reset and look at some of the realities. Most of y'all, if you don't want to be entrepreneurs, you're going to have to be an entrepreneur, perhaps in the future, with the introduction of the gig economy. And the idea that you may be contract work for a respective organization rather than being a W-2 employee. And so you're going to have to learn how to be a business, how to get incorporated, how to have articles of incorporation, how to have an operating agreement that governs the business, how to have, hopefully, shareholders. I believe a lot of those, 2.9 million Black-owned businesses, this is a perfect opportunity for you all to practice some merger and acquisitions. Come together. Maybe we don't need 500,000 PR firms that are chasing the same, customers. But the other thing is we need to understand the science of entrepreneurship and company building. Just because you have the passion or just because you are forced into it does not make you a good company builder. You may be obsessive about the problem you want to solve and what you want to bring to market, but you also want to make sure that you understand the science and that you master company building. And there are a lot of tools and resources out there through Opportunity Hub and through other organizations that you can get that. But, Michelle Alexander, when she was doing this research about Buy Black, she discovered that you really can't buy Black and exist on the grid. And I think the reality of it is we've got to reset and have an honest conversation. We have to reset Black entrepreneurship into a modern day context where we are offering the products and services that people are able to buy right now and want to buy. But first, what do people need? What do people want and what are they able to buy? And then the same thing with companies. I think about the Black-owned business, Paul, that reached out to me. They are a minority supplier. They're not on the BE 100s, but they're close to it. And they've been doing business with corporations through minority supplier development, where they're shut down right now because most commercial property in America is shut down and there's no desire for promotional items. There's no desire for cleaning buildings. And they're talking about they may lose their contract because these awful robots, right? These awful robots are going to come in and these drones are going to take my cleaning jobs. And they're not understanding that as the future of work and fourth industrial revolution come, a lot of those business models are going to go away. So I think rather than just kind of signal the same narrative, it's time that you do the research, put in the work, sell products and services, build products that you and people are able to bring to market and people are willing to buy. And then we should support the ecosystem building organizations that are preparing these entrepreneurs. We should support the Black pre-accelerators like New Me, the Black accelerators like OHUB and Social Conscious Ventures and Camelback Ventures. We should support the Black co-working spaces, the Black incubators, tech hubs, and platforms that help us invest. And we should all back those companies. Right? We talk about access to capital, but just because you are a Black-owned business don't make you a venture backable. It doesn't make you ready for small business. And it also doesn't mean people have to buy from you because the minimum standard should be excellence. And then there should be grace extended that no business is perfect. We allow everyone else to have a quality assurance department. So why can't Black businesses have that as well? And finally, remember this, failure isn't fraud. A lot of times when Black people go into business, we are discouraged or we carry the weight of failing. 75% of venture-backed businesses fail. If white VCs would just allocate some of that money to the tune of $1 billion through Black venture funds and then out to Black founders and Black programs, just take a little bit of the money that y'all already failing with anyway and reallocate that over to us. And while that is happening, let's also renew our minds. The thing I like about renewing the mind, it sends a message to the mind that at one point your mind had that thinking and you just got to renew your mind. We have to renew our mind that it should not just be about income, but it should be about equity, ownership. I want people to own a piece of what I have. And we have to bring together these new economic structures, equity crowdfunding. I was a huge advocate and lobbyist 8 years ago when the president passed that, President Obama passed that. He said off the record that this was the closest thing to economic empowerment for Black people post the emancipation of the Southern slaves. Mm-hmm. The ability for Black people to be able to invest in other Black people legally and not have to have a certain wealth or certain net worth. So the tools are there, Paul. The resources I believe we have in our community, even with the layoffs, even with people losing their jobs, what Black people have globally is we have this grit. We can show you how to survive with nothing, to create from nothing. It's in us. We've had to do it throughout the centuries. So yes, we can look at the doom and the gloom, but at the same time, let's look at what we do have. We can build with what we do have if we shift our mindset away from consuming and dressing up and partying. This is the time to shut all of that down for a season and get refocused and say, how do we ensure that we can ensure the next 50 years and 100 years of Black excellence, even amongst white supremacy? I don't know if we should be truly tearing down. First of all, we're not going to be able to tear down the white supremacist system until we have an economic stronghold by which to lobby, by which to elect mayors. Mayors appoint police chiefs, but the district attorney is elected. If you look at the local level, if you want to change the culture of a police force, you got to change the culture of its leadership. That means you got to have the money to write the check to the politicians, and you got to make sure that the politicians are held accountable in the right policy. We got a lot of Black folks that need to go back to policy school because they're still pushing policies from 30 years ago.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, that goes to exactly, Christina, what you mentioned right at on the front with your father supporting Mayor Dinkins and then Jesse Jackson's presidential campaign. And also, Rodney, to your point, guess who we just had last week on Better with Paul? We had Dawn Richardson on here talking about how she was raising all this money, right, during COVID, right,
Yeah.
with Popcom, which was so impressed. So
I
impressed.
invested. I'm one of her investors. Yeah.
Yeah. You know what? I tried to get on this list. I couldn't get on because I'm in the UK. There's no UK and no Canada. It's terrible.
U.S. legal laws restricted our SEC, redoing the SEC. You know, the UK, real quickly, the UK has actually better securities laws for raising capital than the United States does. We need to catch up with you on securities laws, but the fact that you couldn't invest in the equity crowdfunding, we could do that in Africa through Ovamba. There's a Black-owned equity crowdfunding platform called Ovamba that focuses on Africa, and we might be able, from a global perspective, to pool our monies through her platform, and then she can invest them in any company.
Okay, There you go.
I have a question. Well, can I ask a question?
Sure.
For Kezia or Rodney. Kezia, you mentioned that of the 4 million, I forget, the 4 million Black entrepreneurs, like Black-owned businesses, only 100,000 were able to employ another person. Mm-hmm. What do you think? And I know that the average Black-owned business makes earns about $80,000 in revenue, whereas the average, majority-owned business has about $450,000 in revenue. What do you think those entrepreneurs who say are making less than $80,000, whose business has less than $80,000 a year in revenue, right? Who can't employ people? What do you think they should be doing? And what do you think those entrepreneurs should be doing? Do you think that is, how do we close that small business gap? That racial gap in small business?
Yeah, I think, actually, I love how you brought up those statistics because you're right. Black entrepreneurs are the only entrepreneurs that grows fewer than 6 figures in business revenue annually. I actually think that Black entrepreneurs don't lack hustle. I think we lack strategy. And I think that that's important. Like, you can start with your purpose, right? But eventually after purpose, you need to have a plan. I think with COVID, we found, and I said this in a different live, that we got our purpose, we got our plan in 2019, then we got to 2020 and things changed. Boom, COVID happened and folks was like, I can't do what I said I was gonna do anymore. No, your purpose is the same, your plan just has to change. So for Black Upstart, what we do is we teach the strategy of business because you have to have a foundation first before you seek to scale. The first thing that we teach, as I've already mentioned, is to explore the opportunities that exist in the African American marketplace. I continue to think that that $1.3 trillion is a treasure chest that we have not yet tapped into. And once we're clear about what opportunities exist within the African American marketplace, then we have to teach about what types of businesses you can start. I think people are like, I want to start a business, and they assume that all businesses are the same. If you're starting a nonprofit organization and it's not a social enterprise, the way that you access capital is going to be fundamentally different than a small and medium-sized enterprise. It's going to be fundamentally different than an innovation-driven enterprise, which is what Rodney is talking about, where you're seeking venture capital. But perhaps with a small or medium-sized enterprise, you can do a crowdfunding campaign on GoFundMe, or if you have a nonprofit, you could be on Rising. Perhaps you need to go pursue loan capital from a community development financial institution, which was created to help low-income minority entrepreneurs who do not have proof of concept get their hands on capital so that they can scale. Once you understand that foundation, I think at that point you need to figure out what problem you're trying to solve. There are people right now who know how to sew, who have fabric, they got needles, a whole sewing machine, still trying to make a t-shirt when we see that people are still trying to buy masks. What is the marketplace telling you right now it needs? Rodney just said that, fill a need in the marketplace. After that, I think that we need to make sure that we're seeking out what the competition is doing. Who are the other people in the marketplace that are doing what you are trying to do? And you need to figure out how you can do business better, faster, smarter, cheaper. And if your businesses are aligned, I absolutely love what Rodney said. Let's choose collaboration, Black people. Sometimes it's not always about competition. How can we collaborate and move up together? One quote I like to say, rising tides lift all boats. I think that people like to look at each other as different boats being on the water, but if we were all looking at ourselves as a tide, and we realize that when you come up, we come up. Third, I think that we need to make sure that we're clear about what we're selling. As an entrepreneur, I'm sure that you know, we have big ideas. We have several ideas. I think you need to pare that down. So what can you do well right now? And how can you communicate that clearly to your customer base? After that, you need to know who your customer is. And I just got one more tip after this, Paul, because I know we're running out of time. You need to know that you can't boil the ocean. It's not that you sell to everybody. Who are you selling to? Where do they live? How much money do they make? Are they a parent? Are they currently employed? Where do they get their capital, et cetera? List out 20 things about that customer and then find where they're already spending their money and take your business there. And finally, the last thing that I'll say, you need to make sure that you have a minimum viable product to test out in the marketplace. I think sometimes we take all our money and we invest it in this big idea before we test it, and then we get distraught when things don't work. And like Rodney said, we think that failure is fraud instead of failing forward and realizing that losses can be lessons. So you need to start small, right? Think big, but start small. Test your item out on the marketplace, figure out what consumers want, and scale strategically and realize that it's okay to start small. I think sometimes we look at the big visions on our computer screens, on our TV screens, and we realize we think that we have to start with a big corporation, but every big corporation, every successful small business started with that first sale. And the last thing that I'll say, I know that business planning is one thing that people are still teaching, but every single one of my businesses got started with a business canvas, which means that I needed to start agile and I needed to learn how to build, test, and also learn. I think when we get our foundations correct, then we can start talking about scale.
There you go. I want to say this, Christina, that was a brilliant question. And Kezia, what I love about your response is it was always like, all right, I got one more thing. I got one more thing. What is the
We have a 6-7 for Black Upstart, and I wanted to make sure to give everybody some free game.
Yeah, it was beautiful. Here's the thing. This is beautiful. I've seen in the chat already, like, Paul, we got to have a part 2. This has been so rich, etc. I've taken down more notes on this than ever, like starting with Emmett McHenry, and then let me just run down some high level thoughts, and then let me let you know what the question I want to ask at the end here is. That given all of these thoughts, right? So strategies, accessing funding, right? Aurora's strategy, Christina, understanding our business models, right? And how we get funded, understanding how to scale, right? That was talked about a lot. Funding Black nonprofits, buying Black, supporting Black ecosystems, making sure that we are thinking about creating a business, considering the LLC, which is brilliant, all families need to do, investing in the stock market, right? Goes on and on. So many ideas that you've poured into us. So one, thank you. But now let me hit you with, I think, the toughest question. And that is, for everyone watching right now, regardless of color, right? Everybody watching right now, what are 3 things that they can literally leave this session with and immediately execute on that's going to give us the most yield, right? That's going to give Black people, Black empowerment, Black economic empowerment, the most yield. What are those 3 specific things? And anybody can take it. Anybody can take it.
You know, I'll jump in. And as a part of a macro strategy, I also wanted to respond to Christina's question about those 100,000 businesses that do generate more than, I think, 50 or 80K and employ 2 people. I think using Dun & Bradstreet, we need to build a database of those 110,000 companies and maybe build some AI, machine learning, matching algorithms to see what the growth opportunities are for those respective companies, because they're the ones that have the most traction right now. Can we take those 110,000 and can we figure out through either customer introductions or purchasing their products or services? I presume most of those 100,000 plus businesses probably sell a lot to enterprises. They sell to corporations or they sell to governments where they're getting government contractors opportunities. So I think we need to know who they are. And then next, we need to build a new class of investors at all levels. We're raising a 100 Black Angels Fund. If you are accredited, have at least a net worth of $1 million or generate 200 to 300,000 a year. We have a clarion call to Black people with money. Let's invest in the Black tech ecosystem through Black VCs, through Black ecosystem building companies, Black skills organizations. The next thing is everyone should go learn about equity crowdfunding. Go to some, look up like Popcom, look up Tulsa Real Estate Fund. We're in the beginning stages of launching a platform where we want to curate Black crowdfunding deals so you'll know what they are. Ovamba, check them out on the continent as well. Also, get a new skill. This is the opportunity for you to go get AWS certified, cloud certified, learn a backend, learn Python, Java. We got 30 students here at Morehouse that are going through a summer intensive program learning Python. Get a new skill so that you will also be able to get wealth, going forward.
Yeah, I love it. Ronnie, those were 4 things. We love it. But no, it's good. You gave us the bonus. So now let me ask you this. Final question for you, sir. How can we support you? Now you mentioned different projects, you're raising money, etc. But what's one call to action? Because one thing that this audience does extraordinarily well is support our guests. So what's one thing that we can do to support you?
Absolutely. Join OHUB. It's free to join, to get in our ecosystem. You can go to join, that's join.ohub.at, join.ohub.at. It's a short form. We do nightly webinars. And once you're in our ecosystem, we're then able to send out other call to actions.
There you go. Is that correct right there, Rodney? Join.ohub. Okay, 18 for
absolutely. Join.ohub.at.
All right, good. So, Rodney, thank you. Thank you for not just today. Thank you for everything that you do. Man, I cheer from the sidelines, but I know that I need to be more vocal in cheering in public. And thank you. Just thank you for leading. Thank you for being who you are. And we'll continue. We will continue. So thank you. All right, everybody, make sure you support Ronnie. There he goes. Everybody say goodbye to Rodney. Make sure you go join.ohub.at. Rodney Sampson, the GOAT, right? The GOAT. All right, let's go back here to, let me bring this off. Let me see. I see Christina.
Hi.
She's waving. So Christina, action items, if you can give us three action items, but if you want to do Rodney, give us 4. Hit us with.
I got it. It took me a second. I think here, what everyone can do is think intentionally about buying Black and buying from Black-owned businesses. It sends money into the community. in a really powerful way. WeBuyBlack.com is out there, and there's a marketplace. There is also a new Google list of resources for those on Instagram that was crowdsourced by my friend and an ally, Rochelle Hersker McPherson, and her company, Lingua Franca. So one, that's helpful, and continue doing that and being intentional, thinking about that. That really helps. Would say donate to a nonprofit that is actively focused on Black economic empowerment issues, or like OHUB, which is a twofer because it's also Black-led. And also looking at nonprofits that are Black-led or Black-founded, even if those are are not necessarily targeted at this specific Black economic empowerment issue, like say All Star Code is. That still is very meaningful. It's sort of the nonprofit version of Buying Black, because empowering those leaders, empowering leaders of color, Black leaders, is a really powerful way to spark change at a concrete local level. So I'd ask everyone to also do that. And finally, speak up. Yes, it is important to just stand up and say, I do believe in racial justice in America, in this country, and globally. And it is important to me that I do this personally. So model that, but also speak about it. Let your social circle know that this is important. By the way, this is true for people who are not Black, especially because our friend groups, our Facebook groups are segregated. White people have to talk to other white people, But I have to say, it is also true for Black people, particularly privileged Black people. There are many who are concerned and aren't willing to also speak up. Who are, complacency is true across all races, and it's not fair, and Black people do have a higher burden, but I say you can't let yourself off the hook, just because you are doing good work in one area of your life. I think everyone has to start and should start speaking out. And I say that as someone who wasn't always as willing to speak out on this and about my belief on racial justice and my focus on Black economic empowerment as others. So those are my three: buy Black, donate Black, and also speak up about Black issues and Black economic justice.
Yeah, absolutely love it. But I think most powerful in that was you being vulnerable and sharing that story with us, that you have become more vocal on the topic. So thank you very much for that. Christina, how can we, so these are three things we can do, right? But what can we do to support you? What can we do to support you?
Well, thank you. All Star Code, the organization I founded 7 years ago, is about creating a pipeline of youth who are prepared to succeed in the tech industry. And it's focused on boys of color, Black and Latino boys starting in high school. It's based in New York City, and it is helpful, of course, to go check it out and to make donations or sign up for a newsletter to find out more about it. So that's a way that you can support the organization I founded, All Star Code. Otherwise, follow me on Instagram, the Christina99, or on the platform of your choosing, and just stay in touch. I'm increasingly starting to speak about these issues and start a conversation. So I'm just looking personally for people to have a conversation with and help share ideas about it as I think more about this cause that I'm really passionate about.
Okay, super. Christina, is that correct? allstarcode.org?
That's right.
All right, super. Christina, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Also, Christina, you know what we're doing in August?
Yes.
We got something in August. We got something in August.
I'll share. We haven't been fully, we haven't sent out an announcement or anything, but just for you, this book will be coming out on Audible tentatively in August. This is it's never been available in audio before, so we're really excited about it. We have a great narrator cast, so So look out for that. If you can't wait, of course, please do buy the book. It's for sale on Amazon, published by a Black-owned publisher, Black Classic Press. So yes, so that's the news that you can get. We're very excited about that, and I'll be back on with Paul to talk about it.
Oh yeah, we're gonna go deep on that one, Christina.
Thank you. A new introduction by me, by the way. So there is something new in the audio.
Really?
It's a new introduction by me, so people will be able to listen to that.
Okay, there you go. There you go. It was fascinating. I saw a lot of people in the comments say that they had not yet seen this book.
Yes.
Right? You must. This is the Bible. This is the Bible. Yeah.
It's the book. Kezia, I'll send you a copy if you haven't read it.
Yeah, there you go.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
All right, chat me your address.
All right, there you go.
All right.
Christina, thank you so much.
Bye.
And last but not least, look who we have. Hold it down. All right, so here you go. Hit us with three things.
Three things. I was hoping to do three and impossible. I don't know. Rodney was on the road. I was like, give us five, Rodney. Give us five.
No. Hit us with what you know we need.
I have three. And it took me some time to really think about it, because that's a heavy question, right? Like what can we do during these times? And I think that a lot of people are really grappling and asking themselves for those solutions. And here are the three that I came up with. The first was tell the truth and shame the devil. So I'm gonna say that one more time. Tell the truth and shame the devil. I think sometimes we dress up what the reality of a circumstance is until there's an emergency. So George Floyd is not the first Black man to be killed by a vigilante officer. We know all officers aren't bad. I don't need to say that, but by a vigilante officer. We know that Black-owned businesses have been struggling. We know that Black women especially have been suffering from the pay gap. But yet for many decades, we've continued to use words like minority and let's help everybody. And this is all an all lives matter problem. I think when we tell the truth, then we're able to get to the truth of the matter, and we're able to really start talking about very specific solutions. So when we talk about the pay gap, then we can start having honest conversations about why Black women will lose $840,000 over their working career, not because they're not twice as smart, not because they're not twice as good, not because they don't work twice as hard, but simply because they are Black and they are women. Or issues like PPP, the Payment Protection Program, why 90% of Black entrepreneurs did not get access to government funding that are funded by everybody's tax dollars, including their tax dollars. Second, I would like to say, if you're scared to do it scared. Okay, some of us started the new year by saying 2020 smells like a bunch of Black millionaires. 2020 smells like my perfect credit score. 2020 smells like a promotion. 2020 smells like a good skill for me. And then when 2020 happened and COVID happened, we forgot the promises that we made in 2019. Like I said before, the purpose is the same. The plan may have just had to change. So whatever you said that you were going to do in 2020, despite COVID, despite the economy being rocky, despite, yes, people walking out into the street and not knowing if today is going to be their last day, I want you to say to yourself, if you're scared to do it scared. Call up that friend and check on them. Go out and get that job. Go and start that business. Go and make that first investment. There is no other better time than today. And then finally, what I'll say is that I want you to tell a Black man and a Black woman that they are able to do exceedingly and abundantly above all things. I think that the narrative for Black people in the media is so absolutely negative that sometimes we forget that we descend from a great and powerful people. I believe that words have power behind them, right? Like the power is in the tongue. So I want you to tell a Black man and a Black woman that they are able to do exceedingly and abundantly above all things. And then I want you to cut them a check as a customer, cut them a check as an investor, cut them a check, give them the capital that their ancestors worked so hard to invest in order to make this America great. The last thing that I want to say is that I want to cut my own check. Yes, I own the Black Upstart, but I also started a new venture, and that is skillhouseu.com, where we are teaching about wealth creation. And for everyone who has stayed on for this hour and 28 minutes, I want to offer a 50% off code on all classes. Follow me on Instagram, send me a direct message, and I will send you that code. In fact, the code is going to be GoPaul. GoPaul is going to be the code. If you go to skillhouseu.com and put that in, I'll give you 50% off of all classes there to teach about investing, wealth creation, getting your credit right, starting your business, starting your Black Family LLC.
Is that right, or is it YOU? Is that correct right there?
Oh, yeah. Just the letter U. Skillhouse, the letter U, and .com.
Okay, there you go. Look at that. Look at that. Can I?
I see.
All right, so here's all I have to say is that you have already done exceedingly and abundantly well above all things. You have already, but you will continue. You will continue. I'm telling you, I'm so proud of you. Every time I see you pop up on social, it's just like, oh my God, you know what's crazy? This is probably not the right way to think about, like how you're growing. But I feel like when I first met you, I feel like you were riding a bike with training wheels. I feel like
I'm starting. I was still a little uncertain.
And now it's like I don't need no training wheel. I don't need nobody. I don't even need to put my hand on the handle. It's just so good to see you. I know everybody will support this, skillhouseu.com, and it's GoPaul is the code.
GoPaul, yes, GoPaul.
There you go. All right. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. You be blessed. In Richmond, everybody say goodbye. I feel like I'm saying goodbye again. Like it's just, man, guys, how was today? Let me ask you real quick. How was today? How was today? I'm just curious. Just drop in the comments. How was today? I want to put this up just real quick and make sure that I know most of you are already here. Make sure that you're part of the newsletter, because what I do is I recap everything that's discussed. This one is going to be an interesting one to recap. I could see already this is going to take me a weekend to fully recap this one. But if you want the full recap, right, this whole conversation summarized right here, Paul C. Brunson /better, and I'll make it happen. Closing thoughts. I see everyone talking about how incredible it was. Closing thoughts is that what I find to be interesting about the guest is that we had some different POVs, right? So there were some different perspectives, but at the end of the day, the key is to do something. That's it, right? You think about, I think about Rodney saying doing something and doing something consistently, right? That's ultimately what this is about. This conversation, what I was hoping would come from it was a sense of inspiration, a sense of motivation, a sense of instruction. And I believe we got that. I know I got that. So I hope you received that. Let's do something. Let's all do something, and let's do that something consistently. You guys stay blessed, right? Stay safe. I will see you all on Friday. Like I tell you, like I started, I never know what I'm going to do. I kind of come up with these topics, 24 hours in advance. I just go off of the vibe, like off of what I feel. So I don't know what we'll be talking about on Friday, but we will be talking about something on Friday at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You guys take care. I will see you. Take care. Sade, I'll see you. Jennifer, I'll see you. Jennifer's feeling inspired. Alexis, I see you. Sebastian says this was the therapy and motivation he needed. Karen's feeling motivated. Sherry's feeling fired up. Christine Chen holding it down in California is feeling it. Judah Jackson, I see you guys. I see you. You guys be safe. Take care.